you, Scarlett and Aneta. Thank you for coming today. And welcome, everybody. Well, welcome to Asking for a Friend. Asking for a Friend exists because we wanted to create a safe place where we can ask the unaskable. The questions that you're worried about may change the way people treat you at work or affect the opportunities that might be given to you. So we're bringing together industry leaders and mental health professionals to give non-judgmental responses in a safe, anonymous environment. But before I introduce our guests, a little bit of housekeeping. Ask questions in the questions tab on the right, and feel free to add comments, thoughts, general agreements, thanks, etc. in the chat tab. And a quick caveat. Everything we do with Never Not Creative is volunteer run and essentially unofficial. We're a bunch of people using the community to come together and tackle the challenges our industry is facing. So with that in mind, also remember that this is being anonymous. We don't have the context for your questions. Everyone's situation is different. Hopefully, the advice you get is something to consider as you also seek help from either professionally or casually from others. If things are getting very serious for you, you should absolutely seek professional help, whether it's financial, legal, or mental health related. So now, with the housekeeping out of the way, I would love to welcome Scarlett Montanaro, is a creative director at Revolt, a B Corp purpose consultancy and activist agency, previously from 18 Feet and Rising and AWM. Scarlett has dedicated her career to proving creativity can change the world. On the other side, she founded the social enterprise Crack and Cider, a shop that allowed the public to buy essential items for the homeless, which launched in London, New York, and San Francisco. She was also guest lecturer at the University of Arts London on the subject of creativity for good and blogged for Huffington Post on topics including entrepreneurialism, homelessness, and diversity in the advertising industry. Hiya. Hi. Aneta, aka the wellness designer, is a psychologist, nutritional therapist, mindfulness facilitator, senior yoga and mindfulness mentor, mental health first aiders trainer, author, and female well-being expert. She dedicated over 20 years of her life to study the science of well-being in the form of physical and mental health, working with individuals and organizations, running well-being webinars, retreats, and writing wellness topic-related books. Thank you. It's great to have both of you here, especially on this day that's a heat wave in almost every part of Europe.
Pleasure.
Yes. So I would love to just dive off into one question first, I think, for Scarlett for you, because I think this could be very relevant. So how to handle being a recent grad and losing a new job shortly after starting. It kind of kills the confidence. Is there a way to get it back?
Yeah, I mean, I've been seeing a lot of student books. I've been getting a lot of graduates emailing about opportunities, and it's so hard. And my heart really does go out to everybody. But I think confidence is such a fragile thing that it doesn't matter what part of your career you're in. You know, any knockback or setback can knock it. And I personally subscribe to the belief that confidence is part of a sort of holistic thing, and if you are feeling good about yourself, you're eating right, you are getting the rest you need, you're taking the breaks that you deserve, then that confidence will come back. And I think if you are not feeling confident in your job and your career, that's one small aspect of your life. Start painting or do the thing that you know you're good at and do that more. And that will help you in a holistic view of your life and how you feel about yourself as a person. If you're doing a thing you love and that you're good at, then your confidence will just automatically start to build. I know I've been through it in the pandemic. You know, I feel useless. I've never not spoken to anyone in days, and you know, you just wonder if you're doing a good job. And actually getting myself up off of the sofa and taking myself for a run, even though it's not linked to confidence, it makes me feel like I'm worthwhile as a human being, and then that gives me the confidence to send some emails and to get some stuff done. So yes, all I would say is that it's probably going to be a long slog, but I can say from the inside of the industry that it is worth the fight, and once you get here, it is great, and don't give up. And yeah, focus on the things that you know make you feel good for now, and just keep going.
And Aneta, from your side, like on the like sort of how these young creatives can sort of handle it mentally, is there anything you could add to this?
I love what Scarlett shared. So I would just add, supporting that exactly confidence is, for me, it's like memories. Memories is something nobody can take of you. And the same is with confidence. That confidence is something that grows inside you. And as long as you feed it with your passion, as you feed it with motivation, as you feed it, yes, this is what I want to do. If there is no lack of hesitation of what path I want to take, then I believe we can do anything. And you will hear me today using a lot of words like resilience and assertiveness, but I will explain it later with further questions.
Wonderful. Thank you. I do have another just sort of a tack on question with this, Scarlett. Is there anything, especially since young creators are putting their books out there and keep sending the books out, is there any resources that are good for even just portfolio reviews or something that like different organizations that might be good to at least so it's not like constantly going to an agency, but at least maybe to get feedback to help all of it and just maybe boost their confidence up in some way of just trying to work towards that goal of building up their portfolio, even though they're having some setbacks?
Yeah, I mean, I used to be part of a brilliant organisation called the Young Creative Council, and on that website they've got a Crit Me list, and it's just loads and loads of people that have given their email address and have said, if anyone needs any help, then they're willing to give their time. So there's lots of organisations out there that are similar, but that's a really great place to start.
Wonderful, thank you. So I want to have a question for you right now. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on showing vulnerability at work, such as crying? In an ideal woke world, it should be acceptable, but in reality and in creative advertising, it usually leads to judgment.
I'm very sorry for the reason why someone is made to cry at work. There's no enough context in this question if it's because of some personal life affairs, right? It could be grief, it could be illness. So if there is a personal life event that we have to come back to work after the period of grief or mourning, right, bereavement, then I believe, yes, this should be accepted. However, if there is a person or situation at work that makes you cry, then I wouldn't say this should be a place for it. So then it probably has to be investigated. What is it that makes you cry? It's very hard now to answer the question without knowing exactly the context.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. Scarlett, from your perspective, is there any, like, especially the creative world, like being my background's graphic design, so I know how there's that emotional level there, like from your perspective?
Yeah, and actually, Aneta, you made me feel a lot better, because I was like, I would never let people see me cry at work. And am I being horrible? Is that a really outdated view to have? But I think it's bang on. I just don't see crying as necessarily a productive emotion. It's probably, I mean, we've all done it. I've gone and cried in the bathroom more times than I care to count, but it's just out of frustration. And when you're so invested creatively in ideas, it's really difficult to not care and just disassociate. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to care that much, but I would advise against showing it that often. Just like you wouldn't burst into a fit of rage in the workplace. It's the same thing. It's almost like you've lost that control of the situation. It's no longer constructive. So yeah, I would say if it's a work-related situation, try to keep that as minimal as possible. But if it's a bereavement or something that is very real that's happening in your life, then everyone should be decent enough to know that you're going through something and be able to relate to you and give you a free pass.
No, that definitely, hopefully, but it seems like sometimes in a lot of like corporate environments, it's so rigid that you just can't, you have to fit that box. And like, I even know whilst I was working at a previous company, when I was still doing design, I would have some design, like creative directors or higher levels saying some of just their tone of voice and how they, and just, it was just some of the most horrific feedback, not in a way that like, it wasn't constructive feedback, and it was done in such a way that I'm just sitting there and I'm about to like, I have to hold back the tears because just that note, and it was condoned. It was like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, in that situation, and I've been there before, and I know you can't say anything useful or constructive when you're that upset. But I would just, again, back to confidence. The people that are acting that way have been given too much license to get away with it. And I do believe that there should be some level of accountability and then understand that they've made you feel that way. And I know I don't think there's anything wrong, doesn't matter how junior you are, to be able to walk up to that person and take them aside and say, you've made me feel 2 inches tall. You've taken away my confidence today in the way that you spoke to me, and I would really appreciate more constructive feedback in the future. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But later, when you calm down.
Yes. My thing is definitely having that confidence, because just even when you're dealing with somebody who's senior to you, having to approach them, especially, I could just see, depending on what level of your career you're at, or even if it's a male, line manager or boss, then you're a female. So that there's that dynamic there that plays a part. So unfortunately, so on that note, I think I want to go over to another question and sort of touch upon, I know we talked about Zoe Scannum's, like in chat with email, Zoe Scannum's like horrific, not horrific, but it's her letter where she described what was going on in the ad world. And there's one question that came through, and it says, bullying and harassment seem to be rampant in our industry. How do we cope and respond and deal with the fallout of calling it out? So I'm wondering, Aneta, would you be able to address that? Because I know that there's so many implications on a person's mental state to have to do this or deal with it and then do it. So.
Yes, we try to at least get onto some level of and layer of understanding the subject. And just to let you all know, I changed my career 3 times. So for those Unilevers who aren't sure what to do with them, I envy them the good, beautiful journey ahead of them. And I also have my fair experience of corporate creative environment. So I empathize with all those who are going through this. Personally, I never had that experience, but I've noticed that through saying no clearly, no thank you, no don't, no I don't, as clearly in a very assertive way. Okay, not trying to explain yourself, not trying to be ambiguous, because of course we understand this is our career, this is our potential, this is our sweat, this is our position, this is everything in it, and we don't know what we can say, how far we can go with it, right? So this is all being understood. But I've learned through life, and this is not just the answer to this very subject, but through personal development, which leads to this personal confidence and kind of knowing our values and our worth, that clearly saying no thank you, means saying yes to ourselves. Or sometimes just not saying anything, that less is more in any given way. If any situation of that uncomfortable level happens, I believe it has to be reported. I believe there is at least one person in HR or whichever department who supports the employees will be able to help. And I do understand what it takes, and it may affect the career, the potential, the performance, everything, but this subject needs to be normalized, because right now it seems like it's an awkward taboo that someone needs to ask this question anonymously to be answered. So it needs to be normalized, just like many other topics that we don't have the time to discuss tonight, but just so it is okay to talk about it. It is okay to share it, because it is not okay for it to be happening. And also, we need to stop shaming and blaming ourselves that it was our fault. That's another subject, right? Another layer of this conversation from another angle. So that's from me. I'm sure Scarlett has got more to add from the industry.
I mean, this was the most challenging question for me because I don't know the answer, and it's so systemic, and I know that I've let myself be harassed because it was easier than saying no because of the fallout that would cause, and knowing that my career was on the line and it could, all of the different things that could happen to me as a result. And then you end up just going, well, you know, it's just sort of, they're just chasing me around the Christmas party. It's not the end of the world. I can deal with this. And that's just not right. And, you know, my coping mechanism is that I know that the people that have done that to me in the past are people that are going through stuff, and they may have trouble with alcohol abuse. I actually, you know, had someone obviously going through the 12-step program reach out to me and formally apologize on their behalf for how they treated me in the past, and apologizing and sort of, you know, accepting blame for himself, like from something that happened 5 years previously. So they're not happy people moving through this world. That you don't treat people like that if you are. So I feel a little bit of solace in knowing that. But yeah, I just try and focus on the good things that this industry brings me, and why am I here, and all of the brilliant things that come alongside of this industry, the travel, the being paid to be creative, the working with amazing people. Like, I just focus on the good and know that it's the small minority of stuff that we deal with, and it's awful, and people should be more able to speak out, and there should be more ramifications on the men that are doing it. So I think this fishbowl app is a brilliant thing, and I actually do believe in naming and shaming. It's just very hard to do it unless you're anonymous. So this fishbowl app, that is, you know, with a lot of anonymous people talking about this article at the moment, I think is a great thing, because then I think that is the only way that it will stop and that the system can be dismantled within this industry. Because without accountability, we can't move on.
You know, it'll keep cycling through and creating, like, perpetuating this long term. I know I was talking with a ECD from Dentsu earlier this year, and even though I don't come from the agency side, I come from in-house design teams, and I remember saying to them, I was like, I've been gaslit, I've been sexually harassed, I've been threatened, I've been bullied, like, listening, and basically their response, which, like, she felt for me, but she's like, what woman hasn't had, like, a list? Like, there's so many, she's talked to other women who can have that same sort of dance card list, you would say. And it's just like mind numbing when just to think that, like, it's horrific just to have to deal with being gaslit or having to deal with sexual abuse. And especially when you're in a culture that, when I told one of my experiences to some people recently, their eyes bugged out with who it was that, you know, and it's just like, it's saddening, but it's like such a cultural acceptance.
It is, and like you say, it's not. Obviously, the sexual harassment is the worst of it, and it's awful. But it also comes down to the microaggressions. It comes down to every day having conversations with men and them not addressing you in the room and just only talking to the other guy. Like, that happened to me this week, where I might as well have just gone home and might as well have not been there. And that even takes a little bit of, it just takes away a little bit of your soul every single time, and you just end up feeling more like, it adds to the stress of just existing if you're a woman. And I've just started reading this book called Burnout, which is by two twins, and I can't remember their names, but I would definitely recommend what they're talking about. Oh dear.
I think it's just, I know Wi-Fi's and all happen sometimes, so hopefully. I think Nate will help with that. So, carry on.
The book Burnout, they just acknowledge upfront that women, existing in this world as a woman, is a more stressful thing. So you're more likely to get burnt out because of all of the stuff you deal with on a day-to-day basis. Even getting home on your own at night from somewhere, you're taking your life into your own hands. And that is just acknowledged. And I think that also needs to come into play in terms of policies, of mental health policies within the industry, with time off, all of the things that need to be put in place to allow for women to feel like shit sometimes if something bad happens to them, and to feel supported. I feel very lucky to be working for an agency like Revolt, because, you know, we have a lot of policies in place for for wellness and, unlimited holiday, for when we just feel like we just need a break from it all, very progressive leadership. So I know that I'm in my nice little purpose-driven bubble here. But yeah, out there in the big wide world, it's a scary place.
Well, it's even, you probably read last year's Sue Higgs LinkedIn post about being pushed out of Ogilvy, London, back in 2012. I'm not sure if you saw. It went viral. I'll send it to you afterwards. But it went viral. So basically, it took her 8 years to publish and be vocal about this. And basically, at one point, when she went to HR to report this male leader, they had a dossier on him. But they're like, we can't do anything because he's won alliance, he's won this, won that, like the whole list of accolades. So that is his, carte blanche to be able to carry on. Of course, years later things change and she elaborates on that, but still, it's like the thought that still it has to be carry on now too. So
yeah, well, I think the big agencies have definitely got that in them. I've heard stories of similar things happening in really, really big network agencies, but in startups you've got relationships with the founders, and there's so many out there at the moment doing cool things, and they're much more aggressive, they're much more able to listen to you as an employee straight away and make policies and changes and just listen to you and build a relationship with the individuals that work for them, rather than them being just seen as the young set of hot interns have just turned up. It's human beings with faces and personalities and lives when you're in a startup. So yeah, it can be mad in the startup world, but I think if you're really struggling in bigger agencies, I would say that startups are a brilliant place to be.
That definitely makes sense. Heard good things about going that direction too. So I think I just want to springboard into another question that's sort of around this theme. It's asking for tips. So do you have tips for speaking to your boss about their toxic and negative behavior? And I know that will be tough. Over a decade in the industry, I just am like, still, it's hard.
Yeah, I mean, that's never going to be easy, but start by not opening with that would be one. I would start by not making it seem like it was a massive deal, like sitting them down in a meeting room, having a big conversation about it will just make it feel like a really big moment. Whereas I think if you just catch them at the end of a meeting when they've done something toxic in the meeting, when you can point to a bit of behavior that they've exhibited that they can't deny, you could say, hey, potentially, if you've got the guts to do it, I know it's hard, but what you did in there made me feel. Again, it's all about you feeling language. It's not you are an asshole. It's I was made to feel like this. And then they won't get as defensive. And to be able to point out a concrete piece of behaviour that they've just exhibited in that meeting, I think would be a great place to start. And then if all else fails, then I think go with the meeting and do it face to face. Don't do it over email because it's really easy to ignore. And I would say that it's affecting your mental health, and again talk about how you're feeling, and that could lead into the reasons why you're feeling that way. But yeah, I would not set up a meeting and say you're being toxic, because that will be a very, very bad way to start any sort of conversation. But that's the best I can offer. I've never had the guts to do what I've just said, so it's easier said than done. And then failing that, HR.
Mm-hmm. Depending on what organization you're in too. So that's unfortunate too. Yeah.
But you never know. If you go to HR, 5 other people in your agency might have also gone to HR about the same thing, in which case something has to happen. Well, not always, depends how untouchable the person is. But yeah, I think eventually things will have to change, and you won't have to be the one responsible for making those changes.
Mm-hmm. It takes a few people, like one person, then to spread it like wildfire, like one after another, and it just collects. So I'm going to jump to another question. Since we're still on this third topic, if you don't mind, since we've been having a nice flow, So this industry feels so male dominated at times that I can feel like for all the talk of diversity and inclusion, we're just spinning our wheels. I'm just starting out as a woman in this industry. Some of the stories I've heard, should I even bother?
Yeah, I mean, I can totally see why you would feel that. And sometimes if I think too hard about it, I think, what am I still doing here? But, you know, I've only really experienced like harassment twice in 10 years. One was much worse than the other. And I know that is unacceptable and I should never have had to experience that. When you put that alongside the fact that I have traveled the world and being paid to be creative and like this job, like I've sometimes wanted to leave myself, and I've gone off and done research into all the other jobs out there. I don't want to do any of them. I just want to do this because it's so fun, and it pays you well. It's got a great career progression. You can get into leadership. It's hard, and you have to work double as hard as men do to get there, but you can do it. And why should men have all those benefits and not women? Why should we all have to leave? That's completely unacceptable to me. And I think of ourselves as suffragettes and fighting for the next generation, because if we all give up and leave, they're going to get all the spoils of this industry and the money and the perks and the pay to be creative and all the great things that come alongside it. And I just can't have that. We need some of it too. And it's changing. And again, being a startup like Revolt, I do feel like I'm in a bit of a bubble, but there are agencies out there that are way, way better than some of the big places.
Well, like Tom Tapper's Nice and Serious.
Yeah.
But that's great. And even what they did a couple of years ago was in 2018, they did the Nice and Equal initiative, where they realized that the people applying for the jobs was predominantly men, and they wanted to remedy that and make it, figure out what's the rationale. So they went through it and saw where they're posting, and they try to make it right. So, there are definitely, and they do great work. So it's, but definitely you're right. Not the big ones might not be the best, but there are good ones out there. Definitely. It's just,
I think there's places like Liberty. I think Champion is one of them. There's lots of smaller places, and if you seek them out, you can find them. And I know it just takes so much longer with the big places to make change. So, if you are struggling, then do some digging.
Yeah, well, I worked at a Fortune 500 company in the States for about 10 years almost. And the last 2 years was right when they're starting their cultural and digital transformation. And transformations in a 2,000 person company, with a WPP, is much bigger than that even, with a cruise ship. So you can just imagine a cruise ship trying to turn.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I know Aneta, she's still having some difficulty, so I guess I'll just continue going. But I want to go on a more of a positive topic, I think, so take a little break and segue. And especially now, since you've done your own venture, and it's a question. It's more about agency, but I think still the fact that you said you have your own enterprise. How can you set yourself up for success as a female to run an agency, be a creator? So with what you've done and also what you're doing in at Revolt, but also you've set up your own charity entity that is scaled across Europe and North America. We'd love to see any insight from your experience.
Yeah, I mean, my first thing would be take a break because I came up with the idea for Kraken Cider with my co-founder Charlie at a point in our career, and then we didn't have the energy or the motivation or the will to make it happen. And then I went off on sabbatical and tried traveling around South America for 4 months, and came back and I was like, wow, let's do this thing. And with her and us as a partnership, we work really well together. And my new sense of newness and excitement for creativity, we were able to push through and to make something incredible. And it was born out of frustration that we were not getting the opportunities within the industry that we believe we should be getting. And we wanted to show what we could do. And I think that is a really, really important thing. That's who cuts through a lot of the noise in the industry. That's a lot of the student books when I see they've actually made stuff live, especially during this pandemic when there's no internships. They're using their time really productively. So I would definitely say it's a great way to get attention. It's a great way to get on all the lists. I've been on Campaign, Mavericks, 30 digital leaders, and IPA Women of Tomorrow finalists, and Beam on 100 lists, and all of those things really, really help you get a foot in the door. But I would also urge you to have an end date on your side project, because just for the sake of your mental health, because trying to run something successful alongside a day job in an industry that is already very demanding, it's just draining. And I was saying yes to every opportunity. I was writing every article that landed in my inbox. I was speaking at every event, and it nearly killed me. So I ended up liquidating Crack and Cider last year. Ran for 3 years, but it was a good slog. But we originally only started doing it for that one Christmas, and I think that would have been a really nice little project. The Christmas, it's 6 weeks. That's what we wanted to do, and we could have just put it to bed. I'm pleased we carried it on, because the momentum it got was insane. But yeah, it couldn't have just run alongside my entire career. I just needed to sort of end it and then just focus on my day job. But yeah, it's a tough one, really. I think it's about getting your foot in the door, and then once you're there, again, still having to show willing and initiative and be the visionary leader. I think that's something as well that I've talked about in the past, about how women can fall into this trap of being the dependable backup. And I use this phrase because I got it from an article in the New York Times. And it was this article called Why There Are No Female CEOs, from women who almost were. And there were loads of really, really high level Fortune 500, nearly CEO women talking about it. And she was like, well, if she could write a book about women in business, it would be dependable backup. And it's because everyone throws stuff at women, and we all say yes to every job because we think it's going to be what makes us noticed. And we work the weekends, and we work late, and we do a brilliant job, and we get it done because we're awesome. And it's like, yeah, great, fine. But what about the visionary job of standing back and looking at the bigger picture? That bit's reserved for men. And that is unacceptable. And I think setting yourself up to be a leader, which is what the original question was, it's getting a foot in the door, but don't just do the busy work when you get there, and being aware of that. And yes, if you're needed, of course, weigh in and be helpful and be useful and all of those things. But remember to look to the male leaders at how they're behaving and the things they say no to, and keep looking forward, look at the big picture of the agency, and that's what I think will actually get you noticed, rather than just sort of beavering away at every single thing that comes in your direction.
But also on that point, like, since you're saying look at the bigger picture, but also like the networking side of things too, like going outside different divisions. Like, I know I was in creative, I would actually talk to people in supply chain and talk to other people in leadership roles just to gain exposure, learn more about the industry, about the company, but then also that sort of then get on people's radars, because all these different leaders will have conversations across the board. Is that something that you've done, or has it been or is it just different when you come into an organization? How's your networking like?
Yeah, I mean, I did a lot of that when I was doing Crack and Cider. I met loads of people, and it was brilliant. And actually, that's paid dividends later down the line in my career for years to come. Whenever I've wanted to change jobs, I'm like, oh, well, I have a network of wonderful creative founders and creative directors that I can just fire off emails too. So even if at the time it feels like a slog, because it can, because it's so hard to fit in alongside giving everything you can to a day job. I think it's great because you know in the future you bank that for the rest of your career, and I think it's a really useful thing to do.
Nice. So I'll continue further because I keep seeing Aneta popping in and out, but try. I know technology is always something. I do have. There was that one question that came in just today. I would love to see that I just mentioned to you before. So I think it's more of a comment and just having you respond to it and gain some thoughts on it. It is quite common in London for agencies to ask for creative tasks between first and second interviews. I find these tasks take at least a few days to complete to a high standard. My issue is sharing ideas for the current client's projects and also the time investment at such an early stage of an interview. So what are your thoughts on that experience, what you've heard, like just love your perspective?
I think that's outrageous, personally. I've been asked to do creative tasks when thinking about going into startups that are not agency based. And I think it's quite normal in that world. But I think when you're a big agency, you should have to pay for all people's time. And Revolt, we've always had the policy of if we're going to ask someone to do work, I think it's reasonable to get people to answer a certain type of brief. If you're an agency that is a bit niche or a bit specialist, so at Revolt, like our briefs are very differently shaped, so it's a reasonable request to say, how would you do at this type of brief, because we haven't seen any of that in your portfolio of work before, but we think you've got what it takes, but we just want to get an example of how you think. But then we pay people their freelance rate for that time. And we don't name our client because that's unfair. We don't use a brief that's live at the moment because that's just, I don't know, it just feels very wrong to me. It feels like unpaid internships, that it's just unacceptable. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what this person's situation is. Obviously, I don't know if you're currently unemployed, desperately looking for work. If so, you handle it how you want to handle it, but I would be tempted to say, this looks like it's going to take me a day and this is my day rate. But again, it's whether or not you really need that job, and whether you really, really want to work for a company that is basically taking the piss.
It's like as you referenced the internships, it's almost like that. Doing spec work for free, doing unpaid internships, it's almost like that war. Like you can use that in your war story of like coming up through the ladder in your design industry. Like you hear people or read about over the years about just saying, yes, I did X, Y, and Z for like a free internship. It's like that war story that people glorify, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's crazy, and it's such a shame because it shouldn't be that way, and especially if it's a big above the line agency that's just doing normal advertising work. Like you've got a portfolio of work to show, so why do you need more work? So yeah, I would just question, maybe if brief is do an out of home campaign for X and Y, you could say, well, I've actually already done one for this, here's my experience in this field, in this media channel or for this industry of client, whatever it is, and maybe pull from your existing body of work to show them that you've already got experience doing the brief that they've set you.
I never had to deal with that, so this is all new to me, so it makes total sense. So I see you're in office today, your Revolt office, and I know it must be interesting to be back after all the different lockdown liftings and all. So there's one question here that sort of pertains to working back in the office, and they're saying we've all been told that it's mandatory to be back in the office for next month. This is causing me great stress and anxiety because I feel like I've now found my sweet spot working and being productive from home. How can I raise this with my manager?
I think it's about give and take. Yay, you're back. it's about give and take. I think if you walk in and say, I will be at home 5 days a week, I'm not sure that's going to go down very well. If it's, I would like the ability to work flexibly, and when I have a project, for example, it's always been the policy of flexible working at Revolt. If I know I need to do a load of copywriting, I just go and work from home, because we've got an open plan office. It's absolute chaos in there and it's too hard to get anything done. So I say, I'm going home, and then I can get things done. So it's either just asking to be flexible in that kind of situation, which I think is a perfectly reasonable ask, or if you want something a bit more structured, just being open and honest. And if depends how you feel and how strongly you feel about it, but there are plenty of agencies out there that are doing the 3-2 model. So if you really feel strongly about it and they're going to be really unreasonable, which I think would be very harsh after what we've just been through for a year and a half, maybe it's time to start looking. But yeah, that's my only advice, really.
So Aneta, I'm not sure if you caught the question or you caught that I asked, but I'd love to get your perspective of how somebody can approach this potentially. So we've all been told that it's mandatory to be back in the office for next month. This is causing me great stress and anxiety, as I feel like I've now found my sweet spot working and being productive from home. How can I raise this with my manager? And especially like the mental, I can only imagine the diverse mental state people are having from this experience of the last 16, 18 months. So what would you suggest? Aneta, you're on.
Have you not got access to your audio?
No. Oh no. Oh my. The pleasures of technology. It's always. Let me see if is there anything. I'll see if that. If not. No, no. Oh my. Okay. So mic is not working. I'm so sorry, Aneta. Well,
But it was working earlier and now it's just stopped.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I've worked on multiple platforms because of UAL, and like things will just go out at one point and like works all day and then goes out, like audio and visual. So then I can't even do anything. So, well, I guess maybe at this point, I think we've covered a lot of good points around of what to do, especially now with the Zoe, the topic of misogyny and so forth within and as being a woman in the ad world. I think we've covered a lot of ground today. Is there anything that stands out to you from your experience, like in general, working in this industry, Scarlett, that you would love just like a last thought, or just so?
Yeah, I think obviously the nature of these questions, we're going to talk very negatively, and my experience is that I've got myself into this sort of really negative, cynical, hopeless place of working from home and me feeling anxious and really horrible about coming back into the office and industry and my confidence and feeling shit about myself and just horrible. And actually, this week, the office opening, whilst it seemed like the big spectre that no one wanted to deal with, I cannot tell you how much better I feel. Just the routine, humans need routine, and just getting up in the morning, getting myself on a train. The weather is helping massively, and being around other human beings and being sociable again, and going and sitting and having lunch together and having conversation, and the sort of monsters in the agency that you kind of give this character to when they're these 2D people on Zoom that you hardly ever see, actually are just normal people with lives, and you sort of end up realizing that you made everything feel 10 times worse than it actually is. So all I would say is that, yes, we haven't fixed things. The industry is so fucked in so many ways. In terms of harassment, and that article this week has been really unsettling. But I feel as though it is making progress. It's slow, but with the likes of this Revolt app, people being named and shamed, hopefully there is some accountability there. And coming out of the pandemic, the vaccine rollout working, and people getting back into being able to be sociable again is going to make a world of difference.
Wonderful. Yes, that is a good outlook to have and perspective, at least now. So thank you, Scarlett, for your time. I appreciate it. And thank you and taking time out of your office, your work day. So I appreciate this.
Yeah, that's okay. Thanks for having me.
Yes. So I think we'll thank you for everybody who's been joining. And this will be posted on Never Not Creative's website probably within the next week or two. So I know if anybody's missed this and couldn't join, so I know how it could be, they'll be able to rewatch it also. So
great.
Yes, well, thank you. Yes, we will. Bye for now.